let's go. I'm going to hit record. Recording has started, Nicole. So, hi and welcome to podcast with Nicole Bannell. This one's called Nicole's Jungle. And this is the space where we shine a light on the brilliant women in business who are doing things their way with heart and hustle and a whole lot of creativity. So today's guest is someone I've known, Nick, get this, for the best part of 30 years. Can you believe it?
Oh,
You heard that right. Nicole and I have worked together in a corporate organisation for many years with our paths crossing. I can't believe how many times they crossed over projects, loads of cups of tea, and the odd bit of office gossip and chaos, hey? So fast forward to today, and Nicole has created something completely unique and beautifully aligned with her values called Nicole's Jungle. It's a creative business that brings together handcrafted paper plants, mindfulness, and joy in a little box. So, in this episode, we're going to talk about how Nicole's made the leap from corporate life to creative entrepreneur, the story behind her jungle of paper plants, and what it means to build a business that's rooted in purpose and play. So, expect some inspiration. A few plant puns, sorry about that, and maybe even a crafting confession or two. So let's jump in. Nicole, welcome to my podcast, and this one's going to be called Nicole's Jungle. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really good, thank you.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you here because I know we've known each other for a long time. But I'm really, I mean, there's nothing we don't know about each other's corporate lives, but I'm so excited for you to share with us everything to do with Nicole's Jungle. So let's start at the beginning then. What inspired you to create Nicole's Jungle, and how did houseplants and paper crafts become such a perfect pairing for you when you were thinking about the business?
So yeah, I came to it in a bit of a roundabout way, I suppose, when I left the company that we worked together at for many happy years, which I thought I would be at forever. And things change and you take new directions. When I was leaving, and you have that kind of big thinking moment of what do I want to do with my life, I thought I was going to be in this company forever. And now I don't know what to do. My instinct was I should just go straight into another corporate job that feels very similar, because that's what feels safe. And that's kind of what I started doing in terms of looking for a new role. But at the same time, other people that were leaving around about the same time all seemed to be having sort of new exciting ideas about whether they were going off to do some sort of entrepreneurship or taking a completely different career path of something they'd always dreamed of. So I just sort of started pondering really on, I'd really like to do something that I created and start my own business, but I've never been one of those people that has lifelong wanted to do that. It was just something that I started thinking about when I was having that kind of what do I want to do with my life moment. But I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I got another corporate job and carried on sort of working in the project management field, doing some contracting roles, but it was still bugging me while I was kind of making that transition. And I started thinking about what I loved from years ago, like in my childhood and in my youth. What were the things that I was passionate about? And something I was always really passionate about was food and creativity. Before I moved into the corporate world, I at college, it was all around food service and catering, hospitality, all of that kind of thing. And I thought I might do a business where you get those lovely grazing platters that you would get either at weddings or at big events, but I thought I might do a small version of that you could have delivered to your home, because in the sort of time of lockdown, of which this was, lots of people were getting sort of afternoon tea deliveries and all of that kind of thing. And I thought, well, that'd be nice for a delivery to get. It's like a grazing board in a box for you and your pals to enjoy together on a Friday night or whatever. So started looking into that, and it kind of got really complicated really quickly, actually, in terms of realizing how it might fit around my life. I kind of realised that I would be at the mercy of when people wanted food, not when I wanted to serve food. There was quite a lot of complications about how would I transport it, how would I keep it at the required temperatures, or allergens, and it just all felt like, no, I don't think this is the right match. So I kind of went back to the drawing board, and I remember sitting one day with a pad and paper thinking, I want to start something, but I don't know what. And I just started brainstorming, what are all the things that I'd like to make, because I knew I wanted to do something creative with my hands. So I've still got the book, actually. I look at it every now and then. I had all sorts in there, jewelry making, all sorts of things that were mainly sort of around crafting. And during that kind of time of lockdown, like a lot of people, I was living on my own, and I was constantly searching through COVID for creative things to do. So, I was building Lego, paint by numbers, building little model kits, anything I could get my hands on, really. I learned how to make those beautiful macrame plant hangers, you name it. I was like, can I buy something to craft? And when I was crafting one of these little model kits, it was of a little greenhouse, and inside it were these little tiny plants made out of paper. And I thought these are quite cute, but they're not very realistic. And a couple of years before, I had started developing a bit of a love for plants. I'd seen a picture on Pinterest of this beautiful plant wall. I was only looking for one plant to put in a corner. I saw this plant wall and I was like, oh my God, I love that. I want to recreate it. And I recreated this plant wall in my home, and I'm now actually friends with the lady that made the original wall. We talk quite a lot. And I got into like this love of plants. So when I was making these tiny little plants in the greenhouse, I'm looking at my plants, and I'm a member of the kind of what I would call the rare plant community. Around about COVID again, there was a big surge on people looking for rare and unusual plants that were costing all sorts of crazy money, and people couldn't afford to buy these plants. And I was like, maybe I could make my own version of these little plants, but I could make rare ones that are the type of ones that us in the plant community are all searching for, but we can't afford, because some of these plants are thousands and thousands of pounds. So when I had, going back to my notebook, when I had all these ideas in my notebook, the thing that was steering me was I wanted it to be about one of my passions. And the things that I was interested at the time was the camper van life, house plants, crafting. So there was like a mix of things. And I was like, as long as it hits one of my hobbies or one of the things that I'm passionate about, or ideally two, then it feels like something I could get behind. So when I kind of was making this little paper plant in the model, I was looking at my plants and I was thinking about crafting. I was like, maybe I could do that. Maybe I could just make these tiny little miniature plants out of paper. I don't think I was necessarily like, this is it, this is the idea. But I thought I'd just like to try making them, see what happens. And so I bought 10 little terracotta miniature pots off of eBay and some tiny gravel, and ordered myself on my iPad the software to do some digital design, and just kind of started the process, really, and made my first one, shared it on Instagram, as you do, and everybody loved it. And I thought, well, maybe this is what I want to do. So I designed a few more, and next thing you know, I was starting an Etsy shop and selling these little paper plants that I had handcrafted. So at that point, it was literally just me making the plants to sell. As the business has evolved, it's a different business now, as you know, and I guess we'll talk about. But at that point, that was kind of my journey to how did it come about. It was all a bit of, I was intentionally searching for something to do, but I didn't know what. I kind of had done a bit of brainstorming, and then naturally, as I was creating something that I was just doing for fun, I kind of had the idea. And then I think within a few months, I had a range of maybe about 10 or so different little paper plants. Had a little Etsy shop open. So that's kind of the beginning, I guess, of the journey. I've probably left out a couple of other crazy ideas that I had along the way, but that was the one that stuck.
Wow. Gosh, Nicole, what an absolute journey you've been on. And it doesn't surprise me, knowing you the way I know you, that you went through that really comprehensive, logical process. You're even on your own in lockdown. It's so impressive. I know that you're a very thorough, meticulous person. So I guess that process that you've described was exactly that, very meticulous. But it's really interesting that you And I love the fact that you explored other options like the hospitality and different things, but you came to the conclusion that if it ticked three of your boxes, so crafting, plants, or camper vanning, then it was probably a go. You know, you could get behind it and feel passionate about it. I think that's probably really great advice for anyone starting a business, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I think you're talking about that kind of planning and detail.
Mm,
The sort of last 10 years or so of my corporate career were all spent in project management. And I
mm,
definitely think that having spent that time managing projects, you know, some from beginning to end, some you pick up halfway through or whatever, but the process of understanding the world of project management is, for me, the most perfect transferable skill to starting a business,
mm.
because you just are able to treat, I think once you've been in project management, you can't treat work anything other than like a project, whether it's work that you do for someone else or whether it's something that you're doing for yourself. Even if it's just a project in the home, I think your mindset just totally changes when you've worked in project management. And I kind of applied all of that, and have done and still do, to literally every element to the nth degree of my business. So yeah, even if you saw my notes from the beginning, they're still
Yeah.
very kind of tuned into that.
Mm,
How do you start a project? What, you know, what's the problem that you're trying to solve, type of thing.
mm. Business is business, I guess, isn't it? It's just
100%. Yeah.
on a smaller scale and for yourself. So absolutely transferable skills. I mean, as you know, my last stint in corporate was all about agile. So if I have got one Kanban for one thing, honestly, I live my life by a Kanban board. I'm obsessed about it
Me too.
and retroing everything. Good
I'll show
Lord.
you mine if you show me yours.
Absolutely. Well, that's a different podcast, love. But yeah, let's move on. So, just a bit of fun now, though. If you were a house plant, you've talked about these exotic varieties, but if you were a house plant, which one would you be and why? And be honest, you know, are you this low maintenance succulent, or are you a dramatic fig leaf fig type plant? Which one would you be?
Well, I would probably be one of the many plants that are silently dramatic, and in that, so if you think, probably the one that would resonate most with a lot of people is the supermarket basil, right? So when you buy
Oh,
supermarket basil, it all looks beautiful.
bane of my life.
It's all, you know, plush and
Mm,
beautiful when you buy it, and literally you turn around and the whole thing is on
mm.
the floor because
Yeah, yeah.
it's just
How
so
many times?
droopy.
Yeah.
But it literally only needs a little bit of water and it's back up again.
Mm,
And like the I wouldn't consider myself to be a dramatic person, but I think in terms of what do I relate to, I relate to that, in terms of, like, I can be so enthused 1 minute, and then I will need to kind of restore my battery again
yeah,
before I go into like the next cycle of whatever I'm going to get excited about. So
yeah.
yeah, I guess there's quite a lot of houseplants that do the same, but yeah, supermarket basil is probably a more commonly recognized one that does that.
Supermarket basil needs a little bit of TLC, but when they get it, they're fine again, I suppose. So going back to your first paper plant, you've taken us through the process about, you know, you sat there during lockdown, down just you on your own, and it was a very different process. So what was that first plant? How did it turn out? And would you proudly display it today?
I do proudly display it today, and I still
Oh,
share the very first picture that I took of it. It was something called an Anthurium clarinervium,
mm,
which, for people that are kind of plant addicts, they would know and recognise that plant. But it's a beautiful Anthurium. It's full of stunning veins, and I think it was the only rare plant, or what was considered rare then. It's not rare now. It was the only rare plant that I owned, that I could afford to own at that
mm,
time, because rare plants were just so expensive. I mean,
mm.
sometimes you were talking about over £1,000 for one little leaf cutting off of a plant.
What?
Of some of the rare plants. So yeah, I owned it, and I could therefore take a picture of my own plant and copy draw, I suppose, that picture, or be inspired by my own picture. So it
Mm,
kind of felt more meaningful for me to create something that I already owned first, and then the sort of following plants were all ones that were kind of on my wish list,
mm,
or ones that I knew were kind of really popular and other people liked. So yes, I do proudly display it. It's still a very popular plant. People still back order it because it was one of the first in the sort of new arm to the business that launched. So yes, it's still very close to my heart. My first
Oh,
baby.
that's really sweet. You're staying close to your roots
Yeah.
and you're still proud of it. Bless you.
To my
Love that.
roots. The
Yeah.
deliberate plant.
Thank you. Thank you. Plant pun. There you go. I did threaten that.
Yeah, you should have a little ding for every time you hit one.
Swear box. So you've talked a little bit about your creative process and where you get your inspiration from, but have you had any inspiration from an unusual place?
Um, I wouldn't say so. No, not an
Mm,
unusual place because the plant people tend to hang out in a few places. You know, they're in
mm,
specific Facebook groups or they're on Instagram, or that's where I hang out with them. So most of my inspiration comes from other plant people, mainly on Instagram or Facebook or indeed YouTube. Because I watch a lot of plant videos on YouTube as well. So
yeah.
that's probably where all of my inspiration comes from. Is I just like to see kind of what's unusual, what people are talking about, what people love, and what
Mm,
I love. I don't ever really tend to make a plant that I don't love,
mm,
because naturally you're not going to put so much love into it. But I think the best place that I'm getting inspiration from right now is I've got a customer in Australia, which blows my mind. I've got a few customers in Australia, but she's
mm.
so far away, and she is constantly sending me inspiration pictures of her house plants that she's got in her house at home in Australia, to inspire my next makes. And lots of my customers do that. I get pictures all of the time from people saying, can you make this, can you make this? So I really love that. That's my favorite place really to take inspiration from. But I do like to drop an odd plant in there that nobody would ever think to ask for,
Yeah.
because every plant that they get is a different surprise each month. So I like to keep them on their toes. So I should probably have covered at the
Ah,
beginning that after I started making those plants to hand make them and sell them, a couple of years on, I moved into a different model where people get to craft their own. So I very rarely craft them for people anymore.
yeah.
They get a monthly box of all of the pieces in a kit so that they can craft their own plants. So I've got a nice community now of makers that all make them together with me.
Wow, that is incredible. I love that. So the fact that your customers then make them, they've got that must have some mindfulness benefits. So how do your kits help people sort of slow down, tune in, and relax, I suppose? Is that right?
Yeah, I think people do. I have a real mix of customers. So I have probably 50-50 are either people who are obsessed with plants that also love crafting, and then the
Mm,
other 50% are people that love crafting that really also love houseplants. So either
mm,
crafting or houseplants is the lead thing.
mm,
But lots of people do also talk about the kind of mindfulness and getting lost in the activity. I get quite a lot of feedback about, this is really addictive. I just want to do the next one. I can't wait for the next box. So
yeah.
I mean, personally, I can only speak from my experience. Like, I find it all consuming to get lost in a craft project, not only my own, any kind of creative project. I started needle felting just before Christmas and made my
Oh,
mum a
mm,
giraffe for Christmas, and that was a completely new craft to me. And it was
mm,
actually one of my customers sent me a gift in the post of my first needle crafting kit.
oh,
And it was to make a little Christmas pudding. It was at Christmas, which was so lovely, and I was addicted to that. So I think, like any craft, and I don't think mine's exclusively different in any way, but when, and maybe it's not craft for some people, maybe it's reading, or maybe it's blogging or watching YouTube videos. When you find something that you get lost in, that's when you look up and it's kind of 2 o'clock in the morning. You think, what am I still doing making this Lego? I should have gone to bed hours ago. I should have been tired, but I'm not tired. And I guess it gives me the same type of feeling, like with lots of other crafts, if you just get lost in something. And yeah, I think other people find the same. I definitely have a bunch of customers that are in some way neurodiverse. I get a lot of feedback from my
mm,
community that they are, in that kind of community too. So I get a lot of people talking to me about how it really helps them with that, because they're not too long to make. You can get that kind of satisfaction and gratification for what you've done generally within about an hour. It's not too complicated. It can become addictive. So some of those traits it really pulls on. So I think it's different for everybody. And I do also have a good amount of customers that are living with a disability of some description, and need that kind of creative escape that they can do from home, because they can't necessarily go to sort of, classes or workshops or leave the house. So I think, for different people, it brings different things. But like anything that you can get lost in, it's just finding that thing that ticks your box, isn't it? I think for a lot of my customers, they really love, the houseplant addicts. They really love to create and celebrate things that are related to their obsession of plants. So those types of people you would also see have probably got, coasters in their homes that are the shape of plant leaves, and tea towels and stationery that are all plant related. A lot of them are just simply obsessed with all things plants. That's good too. I have a good amount of people in my community that aren't really necessarily obsessive crafters, but they just love plants. But I also have some that are the other way around. So yeah, I guess it's there's a mix, but it is one of those things I think you can get lost in.
I love that. I think that's a beautiful thing to get lost in, especially around COVID and the fact that your business started during that time. Really, it feels like such an organic process to where you are now, coming from COVID being the inspiration. Really lovely. So you said that you've always been a houseplant lover and crafting. You've married those two ideas together. So you've gone from that to a founder of a business. What was the biggest mental shift you had to make to sort of see yourself now as an entrepreneur, or sole entrepreneur, as we now called, aren't we?
I guess the biggest thing that I have had to shift mentally, which I still battle with every single day,
Mm,
is the difference between having a steady income in a reliable way, and the unknown of
mm,
um, the the growing business life.
mm,
Speaking really openly, my business has been running for 3 years. I moved to the subscription box make your own model just over a year ago, and I would say the first 2 years I was kind of just playing at it really and learning.
mm,
I didn't make any money at all.
mm,
It was more like a expensive hobby, but I absolutely loved it. Whereas it's only been in the last sort of just over a year that I kind of reached a make or break point of I either need to do something different and move this into a proper business that's making money, or I need to stop because it
mm,
is all consuming. And I kind of made that shift into the subscription box, make your own model. And it's proved a good move. But
mm,
as with a lot of businesses at the beginning, you do not make anywhere near as enough money to pay yourself.
mhm,
And I'm, well over a year into that. I've had
mm,
no income come in a year because every bit of money that the business makes is going back into the business. And I've been
mm,
living off savings. So if you'd have told me when I was working in my comfortable corporate career that I thought I was going to be there until I retired,
mm,
one day you're going to be living with no income whatsoever, having to
mm,
rely on whatever savings you had in the bank for
mm,
over a year, and you don't know how that's going to end. If somebody had told me that, I don't know. Well, I just would have said that's not me. Like I would never be able to do that. But I
yeah,
have been living in that situation now for a year, and it is quite a scary situation to be when you're somebody that's very organized, plans for the
yeah,
future, has reliable income and routines, to kind of it feels a bit seat of your pants,
yeah,
which I don't mind a bit of seat of your pants work in a corporate environment, but when it's your life that you're playing with and you're thinking, okay, those savings that I had that have lasted me for this year, I could have paid off a big chunk of the mortgage, or well, not a big
yeah,
chunk, but you know what I mean. I could have put
yeah,
it towards the mortgage, or I could have saved it. I could have put more into my pension, but
mm,
I've chosen not to do that and live for the now. Um, with just the sheer determination and hope that it's all going to be all right. And even
yeah,
if it's not, I will have really enjoyed the process. So I think that's probably like the mental shift of running a business, it is just like other work, but more exciting, more passion, more everything.
Mm, mm.
But living with that uncertainty, I think, has been the biggest mental shift that I've had to deal with. And yeah, I think about it every single day. It doesn't go away.
Wow. And I think a lot of business owners who listen to this podcast, that will resonate with, because the buck stops with us, doesn't it?
Yeah.
There's no one
And
else for
sometimes
us.
you do have to know when
Yeah.
to quit.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'm anywhere near that type of decision.
Yeah.
But I was there a year ago thinking I either need to put everything in this, or I need to stop, because, I need to choose what type of life that I want going forward.
Mm.
And, running a business is hard in a lot of ways. There's a lot of sacrifice that you have to make to do it. But
Yeah.
there's just so many positives that I have experienced that I think I wouldn't swap
Mm.
this for the world.
Yeah.
So it is, it is sometimes right to stop. But yeah, I'm really enjoying it. So I'm not ready to stop just yet. And we continue to pray for a lottery win until my business is big enough to pay me.
Oh, could you imagine what Nicole's jungle would be if you had that kind of sponsorship and backing behind you? But I think, just from our point of view, the listener's point of view, we are wishing you all the best and willing you all the way. And knowing you as I do, I know your determination, your passion will make this a resounding success. I just want to pick up on something that you've said there, though. You've had a serious leg injury recently. I'm just wondering what impact or influence that had on your decision to continue this business, then your creative business, if at all.
I mean, yeah, it definitely impacted it, and wasn't in the plan. So I
Mm,
missed the last of three steps, leaving my mum and dad's on a Friday night. We'd just been around there for fish and chips, and
mhm.
I'd gone down those steps so many times, and my brain just didn't remember there was a third, and I missed the third. Had the dog under my arm and twisted so that she would land on me and me not on her, and my leg snapped in three places.
Oof,
And that was uh, 2 weeks after I had launched my new subscription box.
good Lord.
So the plan at that point, before the leg break,
Mm,
was I was still in contract. I was working in the civil service,
mhm.
doing some really interesting work, but that contract was due to finish up at the end of March, and this was mid-February. So at the
Okay.
time I broke my leg, my plan was, um, well, I didn't know I'd broken my leg at this point, but I was thinking, I'm going to finish this contract up to the end of March, and then I'm going to take 2 months off, and I'm going to go
Mm,
all out and put my everything into my business and see what I can do in 2 months, and then
mhm,
make a decision from there about whether I return back to contracting for a period of time. I just wanted to test myself, really.
mm.
And to be honest, I'd only got to the decision where I was comfortable to do that through spending time with a life coach. I'd spent some time with a
Ah,
coach, I think just before the Christmas before. I'd had a number of sessions with a coach, who was busy getting their qualifications, and they needed to
ah,
get some coaching hours in to
yes,
be able to, evidence their progression within their course. And they were looking
yeah.
for volunteers, and it was somebody that we both know and worked with in our old
Mm,
organisation. And I knew that I would respond really well to
mhm,
them. So it actually it was only through having some good conversations with that coach that I'd even got myself to a stage where, that coach basically said to me, after listening to me again and again, kept saying to me, could you, in theory, take a couple of months and see what happens? And
mm,
I'd never really even thought that that was an option. I'd always thought, I need to do this alongside my work until it
mhm.
can pay me, and there's no
Yeah,
other way. I didn't ever think I can stop work, do it for a period of time, and then start again.
yeah.
But she really made me think about that question and whether I would be willing to do it. And I don't know about other contractors out there, but once you get into contracting, it's really hard to stop, because
Mm,
you get that fear of, what if I'm not going to get the next contract?
yeah,
Or, I don't want to take holiday because every day is money. And you
yeah.
get sort of addicted to this process of not taking time off, and not wanting to put yourself at risk. That the
Mm,
idea of just taking a couple of months off put the fear of God into me. So I just thought, I can't do it. But she really helped me to think, like, could you do that? So that was my plan, was to finish this contract at the end of March, take 2 months and see how it went. And then I broke my leg, and I thought, well, I don't want to waste 2 months now doing that, because I can't move. I can't go anywhere.
Yeah.
I was, I'd hurt the other ankle on the way down, so I was confined to a wheelchair for a few months afterwards, and I was literally like on my own, living in my house, trying to still deliver for the civil service. Plus, I just launched a business.
Mm.
And I was thinking, if I take some months off now, am I really going to get the best out of it while I'm trying to recover from an injury and I can't leave the house? But
Mm.
actually, the decision ended up being made for me. I think my recovery and the impact that that injury had on me
Mm.
took its toll more than I expected to. And the thought of going into another contract at the end of March, I just thought, do you know what? I just need to recover.
Yeah.
And everything was taking so long to do. I just wasn't able to fit a full-time 9 to 5 in, as well as stand up this business. So I just thought, you know
Yeah.
what, give myself a couple of months to recover, start running the business and getting these subscription boxes out, and then I'll see how I go. And then inevitably I absolutely loved it, and I just got addicted to my own business. And the
Yeah.
longer it's been, the longer I've just thought, I just don't want to go back. I don't want to go back to working
Yeah.
for somebody else. So it didn't really happen on purpose that I've ended up this long not working in the corporate world. It sort of kind of feels like it wasn't forced upon me, of course, but it felt like my body was like, there's only so much you can do, and you can do everything slowly because you can't get out of a wheelchair. So everything's going to take, 100 times as long to do.
Yeah.
So you're just going to have to give yourself this time to recover and worry about it later. And then it's kind of morphed into this, but I don't want to go back now, so I have to
Mm.
make this work. So I'm now obviously fully functioning. I can walk, and I've recovered. I'm still recovering, but I've recovered as well as I could do.
Mm.
But I don't want to go back. And I'm in that space now of, how do I make this work as quickly
Mm.
as possible to prevent myself from needing to go back.
Yeah.
So yeah, it kind of forced my hand, but I was also going to try and take a couple of months anyway. So it's just panned out. I kind of look back and think, I haven't got one of those stories where I was like, I quit my job and then this happened. I just sort of, I didn't quit my job and then this happened. I just sort of didn't go back for a while because some
Yeah.
stuff happened, and now here I am.
Yeah. It's so interesting, isn't it? The way life has a way of panning out. Because you and
Yeah.
I were both, lifers at that organisation. And you and I both now on completely different paths. If you'd have asked me a few years ago if I'd have been doing this, I'd have thought, no way, no hope in hell. But a bit like you now, I'm starting my coaching business. Funnily enough, isn't it amazing what an impactful coaching conversation can have on your life? But it has this profound impact on you where you just don't, the thought of doing the 9 to 5 and working for someone else and pouring your energy into someone else's business is so different to doing it for yourself. Everything that you pour into the business, it's for you, and it's going to have an
100%.
impact on your business, and you're doing it for the,
And I
you know,
also think, like,
yourself.
when I first started it, I
Mm.
was really just trying to prove to myself that I could do something, that I
Yeah.
could start a business. I don't mean it to sound throwaway, but it didn't really matter at that point what it was going to be. I just wanted to
Yeah.
prove to myself that I could do it. But everything's shifted now, because the messages and the emails and voice notes that I get from people are so impactful about what it's done for them, that I can't
Yeah.
believe them. I don't believe it's, I mean, of course I believe them, but when they tell me, that they're going through, I don't know, loss or a cancer journey, or,
Mm.
all sorts of different things, and they very descriptively tell me what an impact what I'm doing has had
Wow.
on their journey, it
Yeah.
blows my mind. I think, I can't believe it. It's just a little plant in a box that you make. Like, how can it have had that much impact? But
Yeah.
I've started receiving, or I did, as soon as I started doing the Make Your Own, so many of these stories, it completely switched my,
Wow.
as if I wasn't motivated enough anyway, I was, but
Yeah.
it completely
Yeah.
shifted my motivation to, now it's gone from, I want to prove to myself that I can start something, to, I now have to do this because people need it.
Yeah.
And the sense of purpose, I can't even describe it. Like, there's no other organization that I've worked for that I've felt so connected, of course, to the purpose, because
Mm.
it's me that's doing it and I'm having this impact on people, which I still can't believe I am. But they're
Yeah.
now driving me to think like there's no way I can stop this because they need it.
Wow. I was going to say, so how do you foster that sort of sense of community amongst your subscribers and fans? How do you keep that going? Any
I
stories you
I
can
mean,
share?
they're just the best. They're just the best. I love them. And I
Mm.
think there's a few things that I do. I mean, I love the detail and I like to make things feel, I like people to appreciate. I think my customers generally appreciate the detail that I've put in. They're those types of people. So I do put quite a lot of effort into, when somebody signs up, I will send them a personal welcome video. It's from me, it's to them. It will,
Mm.
if they tell me when they sign up what their favorite plant is, I will talk to them about that. It's like I've got a new friend.
Yeah.
So I do things like that where they get like a little personal welcome video. I've got a private Facebook group where only members of the community can join, and they're all in there sharing their makes and giving each other tips and cheering each other on. So that's a really lovely space. And I just try and use the kind of things available to me, I suppose. Like on Instagram, I use a feature called Close Friends, which I don't think is used enough. If a customer shares their Instagram handle with me, I'll add them to my close friends, and I do
Mm.
stories just for them where I'm talking more, more candidly, more personal. I'm giving them little hints about what might be coming or what I'm
Mm.
working on, or what's going on in the business. So I kind of take them on the journey with me, and I love that every single day, whether it's either on Facebook or in my Instagram DMs or by email or over WhatsApp, I'm always getting messages from people telling me about their makes or telling me about their lives or asking me about things. It's just kind of grown. And last month, for the first time, which I really loved, because one of the problems I wanted to solve, which often happens with any kind of service that you provide, whether it's a product or a service, is
Mm.
you want people to actually follow through on the thing. So I don't want to just send the kits out and then end up, in a pile in a corner of craft projects that don't get made. I want to see people
Mm.
making them.
Yeah.
And as with everything, like life gets busy and, things stack up and don't get done. And I guess it's the same with coaching. Like you want to see people follow through and actually
Yeah.
take the action afterwards. So how do you make sure that people do that? And I was starting to see, the odd comment from people saying, oh, I've got 3 boxes piled up, I've not made them. And
Mm.
started thinking, like, how can I help people to get them made? It's not good enough really for me to just send the boxes out and take the cash. Like I want to see people have the joy from making them. So
Mm.
I invited people along to like a little informal craft and chat session. I just set up a Google Meet, shared the invite with them and just said, look, if you want to come along, you can bring a craft with you or bring nothing and just chat.
Yeah.
And we had our first one last month, and it was just the loveliest thing. Like somebody was painting one of their pots with a character from Wallace and Gromit on it. They were like really arty person. Then someone else was doing some crochet, and we were just all talking about kind of what we had in common. So I
Yeah.
kind of try and do things like that I think is probably a bit different from some other businesses. But I suppose if you look in the creative space, you'll probably find a lot of growing businesses that do things that are a lot more community focused, because
Yeah.
it is, founder led, and it is your baby and your community. So I don't think anything I'm doing is that unique, but I do spend a lot of time talking to my customers. And like, I feel somebody sent me a picture last week of their pin collection, because I've just started doing some new pins, and I looked at this picture and I thought, this lady, she loves animals, she loves books, she spends time thinking about that. Like, I just understand so much about her from this one picture that she sent me of her pin collection. I nearly replayed it all back to her, saying, like, I feel like I know you inside and out now. And that's the kind of thing that I love to spend time talking to my customers about, because I feel like they know me, because I talk to
Mm.
them every month on video in the tutorial, and I like to get to know them as well. So yeah, I spend a lot of time around my community, and I would say like, apart from paid advertising, mainly my socials are for my customers. That's where I spend time, not really hard sales, like trying to grow new customers. I spend a lot of my time sort of nurturing, I suppose, on my socials, because that's where my people are.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I know the company that we worked with. at always looked after their customers, didn't they? So I suppose that's ingrained in you as well, to
Yeah.
keep hold of the customers and value them. What's the weirdest or funniest question a customer's ever asked you about one of the kits or the plants?
I don't know if there's anything that strikes me as particularly weird. I mean, I do get a lot of requests for, can you make life-size versions? Can you? Somebody last week was asking me to turn them into earrings.
Oh,
I've had that a couple of times, like the full plant.
wow.
So that's quite interesting. But yeah, I think just mainly people ask if they can, most popular is, can I do life size ones? But I love miniature things. I love small
Mm,
things. People
mm,
find them very cute, and a lot of my customers, they love crafting, but they also love cute small things. So I've kind of
mm.
kept it at that. But I haven't ruled out doing some life size versions at some point. But it's on the never ending to do list. But I can't think of anything super weird off the top of my head. It's mainly people asking for different types of plant,
Oh,
or bigger versions, or make them into magnets, or make them into earrings, that type of thing. I tell you what, one that was weird actually, that I've just remembered, was I was talking to somebody at a camper van festival, who looked at it, and it, when somebody just doesn't get it, and that's fine because it's not for everybody, but it kind of looked
mm.
at it, he held it in his hands, I could see his mind ticking, pondered, and he went, what do you do with it? I said, well, you just put it somewhere in your home, somewhere where it's going to look cute, it's an ornament.
Yeah,
Oh, and the response was, oh right, and I could see the brain thinking again, and it was like, does it smell? I was like, no, it doesn't smell, it's just an ornament. Did you make it into an air freshener? And I was saying,
oh my
no,
God.
because I'm not in the business of selling air fresheners. I'm in the
Yeah,
business of selling paper plants. So
yeah.
that's probably the weirdest thing that I've ever been asked to do, is turn it into an air freshener, because the person didn't see the point in it.
Put scratch and sniff on your R&D
It's
list.
funny
I
actually,
was
because
saying, so
people
what's
always,
next then? Sorry, go on, carry on.
no, I
Sorry.
was just going to say, people always have a tendency to um, say, why don't you do this instead, or why don't
Ah,
you do bigger ones, or why don't you change it so that you do flowers, or
mm,
I get a lot of, or I did more in the early days, was getting people making other suggestions.
mm,
And I was always quite fixed on, no, this is what it is.
yeah,
It's either for you or it's not for you. But I think you have to really look out for that, because it can be quite distracting. People, are often with really good intentions, will look at your business as you're starting out and start suggesting other things that it could become.
yeah,
It's a dangerous game to play, because you start chasing, you can start chasing, oh, maybe that is a good idea, maybe I should be making them into air fresheners, maybe I should be making bigger versions of them. And actually, I'm really glad that through the whole thing I've stuck to really what I wanted the core product to be, which is,
yeah.
no, they are for a niche, they are for plant lovers that like crafting, that also like small things. And if you're not that person, that's really cool. But yeah, that's definitely something I would say to look out for.
So, well, what advice would you give to other women looking to turn their passion into a business? So stick to your guns, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I think there's a mixture of advice out there. I mean, there's just so much advice out there.
Mm,
And one of the things that I always think about is people giving that advice about staying in your lane,
mm,
which I don't necessarily agree with. I think, it can be applied in different ways, but I just think, like, you you should you should try and follow your gut, but also get evidence to back up what your gut is telling you. So,
mm,
it's a little bit like manifestation. I think I always think about this. People talk about the how effective manifestation can be, but manifestation without action is nothing.
yeah,
Unless you actually do something to get towards the thing that you're trying to get to, you're
yeah.
just thinking about it. So much as I don't disagree with manifestation, I agree that you should have a goal that you want to manifest, but the way to manifest it is to take action towards it. And I think for me, if I was to, there's so much advice now that I think that I could share with others, but my biggest what I've learned the most from is seeking out learning, free learning. I literally soak it up, and I know that you're a learner as well, but
Yeah.
I spend my entire waking hours devouring anything that is going to give me more information to help me make good decisions.
Yeah.
I literally just gobble up podcast after podcast, YouTube
Mm.
video, online courses, free webinars. I go to them all,
Yeah.
and some of them are not great, but everything really, apart from my own skills that I've learned through years in corporate and project management, organization, and all of that kind of stuff, everything
Mm.
else has come from me absorbing as much as I can from books and podcasts and any learning that I can get my hands on. And a
Mm.
lot of that has taught me how to find evidence to back up my decisions, and how to sort of which way to point towards to kind of
Yeah.
get to the next stage of your business. So I think just learning, but I guess with that comes a bit of a caveat. When you are a bit of a learning addict like me, you can end up following everybody's advice, which can be dangerous because people have all got their own ways of doing things. So I think when you find a method, like pick somebody that you want to learn from and follow their way, rather than that kind of temptation to be like, oh, this person said to do it like this, but this person seems credible as well and they do it a different way, so maybe I'll just try both ways and see which works. You can do that to an extent to see which works for you, but you can't continuously be following various methods all at the same time. You have to find the ones that work for you and just stick with them. So yeah, I think learning and seeking out the learning that's relevant for you and your path would be probably my biggest bits of advice. I think it's about finding mentors that don't know their mentors. I would consider so many people mentors of mine that do not know that I exist, because I
Yeah.
literally devour everything that they share.
Wow. Brilliant advice. So learn, get loads of freebies, use those free resources at your disposal, but be selective about the ones that resonate with you, and don't take everybody's word for advice, or you'll just have too many voices in your head. Just
Yeah.
stick to the ones that resonate with you. Brilliant advice. So I cannot believe that we've gone over in our podcast. I've got so many more questions for you, but I think I'm gonna leave you with, I'm gonna ask my last question, which is, what legacy do you hope Nicole's Jungle will leave in the world of creativity, well-being, and women-led businesses?
I think I'm trying as best as I can to tell my story as I go, whether
Yeah.
it's through sort of sharing through podcasts like this or writing blogs. And it's something that I don't, I find it hard to believe when I read it, but people tell me that the stuff that I'm doing has inspired them or does inspire them.
Yeah.
So I think that that's really what I would like to continue doing, really, is inspiring people to think about how they could do it their way. um I don't think anybody's really going to remember paper plants in 100 years time, but I think it would please me now to know that I've inspired some people to follow their passions or get involved in crafting, or take those steps to think about starting a business. And I'm trying to surround myself with people that can help me and I can help them as well. So I've started a small mastermind group with a group of my old colleagues, actually
Mm.
from our old company, and I spend a lot of time with them, and they give me and I give them in terms of value. So I think, yeah, just through sharing what I'm doing and sharing my story, hopefully that inspires other people to either get involved in something that they enjoy in terms of a hobby, or even maybe start something.
Wow. Oh, I'm so excited to know what happens next for Nicole's Jungles. Thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast. It's been amazing to chat with you, to laugh and reminisce about our days in corporate a bit too. So if you're listening and feeling the itch to create something with your hands, or even just, looking at a mindful moment in your week, go and check out Nicole's Jungle. The kits are gorgeous, the community is growing and sounds so effervescent. And trust me, it's impossible not to smile when you're building a tiny banana plant out of paper. So you can find all the links to Nicole's work in the show notes. And as always, if you enjoyed this episode, do hit subscribe and leave a review, or share it with someone who needs a little creative inspiration today. So until next time, gang, keep growing, keep going, and I'll see you soon. And thank you so much again to Nicole Bannell and Nicole's Jungles for your brilliant insights into a woman-led small business. Nicole, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Nicole.